And we are back for episode number 12 of Sports the NEMO Way, where we are going to be discussing Pistol Pete Maravich, and he will be defended by Uncle Doug, as he is the only one to put him on his list. So I will go over his career briefly, and then Uncle Doug will make his case. The 6'5", 197-pound shooting guard who played for the Atlanta Hawks, New Orleans Jazz, and Boston Celtics, where he won 0 championships, 0 MVPs. He's a 5-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA, playing 10 years in the league after being drafted 3rd overall, and is a Hall of Famer with career numbers of 24, 4, and 5 on 44% shooting. Take us away, Uncle Doug.
All right, Pistol Pete. He was one of those players that I think transcends. I think he could play today. I mean, he's a 6'5" guard that could handle the ball unbelievably. He could handle the ball like a point guard. He made unbelievable passes. He could score. I think today he would tear up the NBA, or at least be really good. Obviously, as Alex said, he's a Hall of Famer. He was the scoring champ in 76-77, made the all-rookie team when he came out. Ended up only playing 658 games over 10 seasons. He played with the Hawks after they drafted him 3rd. Had some issues there because the 2 main stars for the Hawks when they brought him in were Lou Hudson, their point guard, and I believe the center was Bellamy. Both were very conservative, very good players, but very conservative players. Pistol Pete was anything but conservative. He believed in flashy passes. He believed in unbelievable twisting, shooting, all kinds of stuff. He could also shoot long range. If you get a chance, YouTube him sometime and watch some of the passes he made. They're unbelievable. So after the 4 years in Atlanta, the team had these good players, but they weren't winning that much because there wasn't that much of a connection. So they then sent him to the newly formed the New Orleans Jazz, where he then finished most of his career. The year they moved to Utah, then he was left and went to the Boston Celtics to finish up. Because his career was cut short, Pete was not that high on all the all-time lists. On the assist list, he was 158. On the scoring list, he's 122. Rebounds, he didn't make the top 250. Probably his best game was in February of 1977, where he scored 68 points against the New York Knicks. And I believe Walt Frazier at that time was playing for the Knicks, who's considered a pretty good guard. At that time, it was the most points ever scored by a guard. The scores that were higher were all by like Chamberlain, other people along those lines. That year, same year, 77, 76, 77, is the year that he was the scoring champ. He averaged 31.1 points per game that season. Another thing to note about that season, the 76-77 season, is the year that they absorbed the ABA. So besides the NBA guys, now all of a sudden you've got this influx of talent, guys like Rick Barry, some other really good guys that we're going to talk about in the future, came into the NBA, and Pete was still the leading scorer in the league that year at 31-1. Excuse me. One thing that I kind of looked at, because his career was a little shorter, I wanted to see where his points per game averaged. He averaged 24.2 for his career. That's the 20th highest all-time average among players, and one of the highest among guards at the time. In '96, with the NBA 50th team, he was on the top 50. The update in 2017, he also made the top 50 team. One reason his career declined was because of a knee injury he had in 1978. which is the year after he was the scoring champ. And the interesting part, he was never quite the same after that. He still put up some decent numbers, but again, never touched the 31 level. Interesting part about the knee injury, he was making a 3/4 court between the leg pass when he hurt his knee. 3/4 court between the leg. That was something that Pete did. Some of the videos I watched, full court, 3/4 court passes, he was amazing at it. His dad had him training basketball from the time he was little. There was always a basketball in his hand. The famous story about his dad driving down the street in the car and Pete's got his hand out the window dribbling. His dad would send him to the basement, 2 basketballs, 1 for each hand, and stand on there and dribble off the wall for hours. Unbelievable ball handler. My dad saw Pete play more than I did. I would have been really small during a lot of this. Talked about him a lot, so that's one reason why I looked him up. And I was just impressed with a lot of the things that Pete did. No, he never won a title. He didn't win an MVP. The teams that he played on, he wasn't going to win a title. And then I think the injury kind of finished him off. But he ended up being my number 10 shooting guard, and so that's why he's on my list.
All right. Well, I think Pistol is such a crazy story. He's such an interesting person. Whether you have him on your list or not, this ought to be interesting debate here. So I always like, especially on these older guys, I always like jumping to Drew since he's so young and see what he has to say.
Well, I always go first, it seems like, but that's okay. Pistol Pete was definitely on my considerations for my list. He was right there, probably. I think he was number 11, actually. I compared him with like James Harden, Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, those kind of guys. But I just think they did a little bit more, and James Harden's obviously still playing. I'll use Harden for an example. He's won an MVP. He's actually averaged more points so far, more than Pete has with 25. He's averaged about the same rebounds, a couple more assists, but that's why I have Harden over Pete. And then with Ray, he averaged less points, same amount of rebounds, a little less assists, but he also has 2 titles, and he played key roles in those titles. Like for the Heat, he made the shot, LeBron misses, Bosh rebounds, Allen 3, bang, whoa, yeah, okay. And Celtics, yeah, I didn't. I was a little bit more foggy. I was a little smaller then. And then Reggie Miller, where's he at? Let me see.
Boom, baby.
I gotta find him. Where's he at? He's about the same as Ray. I think he maybe averaged a little bit more than Ray, and then rebounds and assists probably about the same. And I think he played a little bit tougher of an era then. But nothing against Pete. He definitely played when, like my dad said, when they brought the ABA guys in too. So it wasn't just like you had not half players, but definitely some of the ABA players were better than the NBA players. So you got more teams and more competition there. But yeah, that's my assessment so far on Pete.
All right. Thank you, youngster. Wade, what you got, man?
Well, I mainly compared him to I had Reggie and T-Mac is my, I believe, 9 and 10. I know Reggie's my 10, and then T-Mac is my 9. The Reggie argument is actually kind of interesting because Pistol Pete's better than Reggie Miller, probably. But Reggie was a lot more efficient. Reggie was a good player for a lot longer. So I think it's kind of just what you prefer. Reggie never touched 31 points a game, obviously. But he did get low 20s. One of the greatest shooters ever. I don't know. You said Pistol Pete was a good shooter. I don't know if he was on Reggie's level or not. But go ahead. You can go.
I was just going to say, I don't know if he's on Reggie's level either because I have Reggie on my list, and I have Reggie above Pistol.
Yeah.
So I like Reggie too. That is one thing that they discussed in some of the things I looked at is how much his scoring would have gone up if they had a 3-point line.
Yeah.
Because he did shoot quite a bit from outside, and any estimate you put on it would be a guess. But they said it definitely would have gone up because the 1 year they had it, he took a very limited number of shots from beyond the 3-point line, but he made 2/3 of them.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a possibility, but it's a what if. So I didn't really throw it in.
But mainly it's just, I think, kind of what you prefer. Reggie was good for, what, 15 years plus? Even at his last year or two, he was still pretty productive. Obviously, Pistol Pete only played, was it 10 years? The last couple, obviously, he had the knee injury, so he wasn't quite the same player, so maybe 8 prime years. Then with T-Mac, well, he did average 31 points a game, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
And he has a few scoring titles. They're scoring-wise in their primes really close together, actually. T-Mac's career also got cut short with, was it back injuries?
Knee.
Okay. Neither one of those three won titles. I don't think any of them won MVPs. So it's really just, I think, what you prefer. I had T-Mac, it sounds like, instead of your Pistol Pete. You have Reggie, I have Reggie. So just kind of what you want.
Yeah, I agree. I just looked, and you're right. I didn't have T-Mac, and we flip-flopped T-Mac and Maravich just like Drew and I flip-flopped Maravich and Harden.
Yeah. Well, I have Harden at 8, I think.
Oh, okay. See, I don't have Harden on mine. So
I think Drew and Wade are the only ones with Harden on that list. So I get Ray. What do you think, man?
I mean, I watched a little bit of, film before we started this, and I like his passing ability more than his scoring, probably. I seen one of the videos. They were titled "Innovator of the Innovation of Showman." He was a pretty good showman, and I kind of like that. Kind of no bragging rights without saying anything. So I kind of like that in a player.
So what you're saying is, Ray, is if he'd have played in the 90s, he'd be on your team.
Oh, it's a possibility. Very strong.
well, and you know, it's funny that you say that because he really was one of the first showmen that really did that, and it wasn't popular when he first came in the league. That's what got him in trouble in Atlanta. I mean, he made some beautiful behind-the-back passes to these other guys to score, but they didn't like it. Even though they're scoring, they didn't like it.
Well, I don't know if you guys have ever watched the Pistol Pete movie. I think it's called The Pistol.
I've read the book, but I have not read the movie or seen the movie. Sorry.
But there are scenes in the movie where they show him like making a behind the back pass and like breaking the guy's nose because he didn't know it was coming, and then like they kick him out of the gym, or like fans would, like the dad of the other kid would like get irate and like of course Press Taylor's kind of crazy, so, or not Press Taylor, Press Maravich is kind of crazy, so like then the dads would get into it and like it would be this old fiasco. Like it was not appreciated during the time he was doing it.
My kind of player. Yeah, I like that.
Well, I mean, Pistol Pete isn't a large part of his what's the word I'm looking for? Lore, or whatever you want to say, was his overall dominance in college. I think you've talked to me about that before. How he was in college, just did
he still holds the record for most scoring average. He averaged 44.2 points a game over 3 years at LSU.
That's
Because when he played, freshmen couldn't play.
Yeah.
So he started sophomore, junior, and senior year, and for this 3-year span, he averaged 44.2 points.
He's still the all-time leading scorer in NCAA,
Right,
right?
yes,
Yeah,
he
I
is.
thought so, and it's not close.
No, and he holds the record for most 50-point games, and I mean, he was just unbelievable.
Yeah, his college stats are astronomical.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
What do you end up with, like, career points wise with that short career?
Total points, he's number 122 on the list with 15,948. He averaged 24.2 a game, which is 20th on the list average-wise.
Pretty impressive. Probably one of those. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I have some things over here. This is the way I look at Pistol Pete. Pistol Pete has a career of what ifs. What if his body didn't break down? What if he had played longer? What if he played with a 3-point line? What if they kept track of all the stats we have today? What if he played on a good team? Or what if he played today? I love Pistol Pete. I own his book. I've read it multiple times. I've watched his movie, like I mentioned earlier. I think he is a one-of-a-kind superstar. A brief superstar. He played 10 years in the league, but really only 7 of his seasons are legitimate, and 5 are big peak seasons. Listening to people talk about Pistol Pete is like listening to somebody talk about Daniel Boone or Davy Crockett. So interesting,
Damn.
so great, but exaggerated and not always true. Pistol Pete's story is sad and short, but bright and brilliant. And that's why he didn't make top 50 for me.
I think there are a lot of what ifs there. I would agree with that. And just like last time when we talked about Chris Mullen and his drinking and how that hurt his career, Pete had the same problem. He was there during the 70s. The 70s were filled with alcohol problems, coke problems, all kinds of stuff like that. Pete, here was a guy that wasn't naturally that popular with his teammates. He turned to other things. That was part of it, and I think in the end that's why he broke down. And he ended up dying at a very young age because his body was just wore out.
In his 40s, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was like 42 maybe.
Did he have a heart attack and die?
Yes,
On a basketball court.
on a
That's what I
basketball
thought.
court.
So
He had
like a
just finished
YMCA or
playing
something.
some pickup games.
I believe he was playing at his church
Yes.
with some guys from his church.
Yeah,
and
he
he
became-
died on the basketball court.
He became a Christian at the after his basketball career was over, and tried to dry out and clean himself up, and was playing, like you say, at his church.
Okay, I got a question just to kind of throw it out there, see what everybody says. Would you rather, if they're in the same situation, would you rather have a good player for 15 years or a great player for 6 or 7? If they're in the same situation, what do you do there? 'Cause
I mean,
this isn't the first time we're running this problem.
No, it's not.
We talked about Grant
but
Hill.
I also think it depends on where your franchise is, because Grant Hill and Pistol Pete were in the same situation. They were very, very brilliant for 5, 6, 7 years, but they were on a garbage franchise, so it did them
that's
no
why
good.
I led
Yeah.
That's why I said it first. If they're in
Yeah.
the same situation, like not different situations, they're in. Say they both go on to a solid a good team,
Mm-hmm.
and they have some players to work with and a good coach or whatever. Which one? Because like where I'm kind of based, Pete Maravich obviously has this awesome peak, and you have Reggie who was really good for a long period of time, but didn't quite get the high as Pete Maravich.
Mm-hmm.
Which one's more valuable? The greatness for a short period of time, or being good for a very long period of time? Because, like I said, we've Grant Hill, obviously Kawhi hasn't played forever. I think we've brought it up a couple other times maybe.
Well, we have definitely, and I understand that Pete is going to get knocked down for the shortness of his career. We've done that with other guys too, and that does make it really tough. The one thing that they kind of look at, again, I really like Reggie Miller too, and again, he's on my list. Reggie, if he had been in Pete's place, I think he would have scored like Pete did. But Reggie was on a team, he scored what he needed to score to win. And if you're on a good team with several good players, your stats aren't going to be as good.
The Pacers were also built on defense, though, weren't they?
Well, they were a
They were
great
good.
defensive team, but here I have Reggie. Actually, just so we can get it out of the way, Reggie made all 5 of our lists.
Okay.
So it's not like any of us are saying Reggie's not top 50. But I think the bigger difference between Reggie and Pistol Pete is not the scoring and the shooting. It's the rest of the game, because that's where Reggie doesn't stack up to a lot of guys. He didn't rebound. He didn't pass.
And he was like 2 or 3 for his career on both.
Yeah.
I think it was 3 and 3 in both categories.
So that's where Reggie struggles to stack up with some of these other guys. Not only are their career numbers higher than his, their peaks are astronomically higher than his as far as rebounds, assists, things like that.
But then you got Reggie, who's in one of the toughest eras ever, one of the most efficient players ever at the same time. So it's
Well,
also a big.
And we've all seen the game where he just blows up Spike Lee.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's awesome.
That game is awesome.
Reggie was one of those guys that at any time could go scorched earth on you, which is awesome. Everybody loves watching that 30 for 30.
That's
what is-
one of my favorites.
What is the damn name of that
It's
thing?
Winning Time.
Is it winning
Reggie
time?
versus the Knicks.
Yeah, yep, you're right. You're right. I love that. But part of me also wants to say, why didn't you do that more? Because it's not like he won a bunch of championships.
Right.
He never won any. So if that was the case, if you could do that whenever you were pissed off, have your teammates smack you in the face or something. Get pissed off because we need to win.
Yeah, but in certain situations, when you play really good teams, they're going to zero in on Reggie, and then what's he going to feed the ball to Antonio Davis? I mean, they had good players, but they were good defensive players.
Yeah.
We talked about Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson's a really good passer, but he didn't tear it up offensively. The Davis brothers didn't score a lot.
No, I
Smiths
mean their
didn't score a
second
lot.
scorer was Rick Smits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they were built a specific way. Defense, everybody contributes a little bit. Reggie runs like a madman off picks and catches the ball and shoots.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Inside and outside. Smith's inside, Reggie
Yeah,
outside.
Mark Jackson throwing the ball.
Yeah.
So again, we're going back to situations again, but I don't know. I just thought that was interesting.
It is. It's a crazy situation to think about because it's a hard question to answer. It's also hard for us to argue, I think, because Reggie made all of our lists. So I don't want to tear down my own player, you know.
No, just a simple debate. I'm just trying.
Oh
to,
yeah, absolutely. I have no problem debating it.
Because I mean, obviously, you're going to look at Reggie's longevity compared to Pete's. That's where I was going to probably beat him in efficiency. But then if you look at passing and peak value, Pete's going to beat him. So I mean, I don't know. I really don't know which one's more valuable. It's really just everyone's opinion. I mean, we can use different players. That's just Reggie was number 10 on my list. Pete
Well-
was number.
Well, also
9
you
or
have
10
to
on
you have to
Uncle
look
Doug's.
at also another thing. You got showmanship against psychological warfare,
Yeah.
and which is more a little bit better towards the game.
Beneficial.
Beneficial.
Yeah. I guess it probably depends on your teammates too.
I would say, I would say Reggie has a fair amount of showmanship too. It just didn't look like Pistols. Pistols' showmanship was flashy passing and between the legs, behind the back stuff that a lot of people had never seen on a level like this. Reggie's was more trash talk and. After he hit a big shot, dancing and screaming down the floor.
Yeah, he tried to
and-
fight Michael Jordan a couple times, I think.
Well, that's true as well.
I
I
think he
think
also-
Jordan kind of came at him.
I mean,
All right, here we go.
but then I mean, yeah, then I think it was against the Knicks. He hits a game-winning shot and then runs down the floor holding his throat,
Yep.
signaling choking to Spike Lee. Like I mean, he definitely had what's the word I'm looking for? Some swagger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some
there
swagger.
Well, I think the easier comparison as far as careers go is the T-Mac comparison. Because their careers are very similar, like you mentioned earlier, where they both have extremely high peaks. They both had a knee injury that cut their careers short. The slight difference in the two is Pete gave up before T-Mac did. T-Mac hung around for 4 seasons where he wasn't really playing
Yeah.
because his body had broken down. He couldn't play anymore, and he just kept showing up, and it drug his career numbers down. Pete went out shortly after his injury. I mean, we talked about him going to the Celtics. It was like 30 games, and the seasons before that, he played like 17 and 40. So it wasn't like, and then it was over.
Yeah, I think those numbers are actually for the same season, if you look.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, I think that if you look at the 17, it's
Oh, yeah,
it's with
he was
Utah and
He was
Boston.
he was traded in the middle of that season.
Right,
He played
yeah.
17 for them and,
They
26
went
for Boston.
to
yeah.
Utah and he went to Boston. I don't
Well,
Utah probably wasn't his best place flash wise.
T-Mac also came out of high school, and Pete
Yes.
played all 4 years of college, so it's
Yeah.
also longer. And T-Mac didn't play a ton in Toronto to begin with. He slowly worked his way onto the floor, and then he went to Orlando, where he obviously was a star, and then went to Houston whenever then he started getting injured. But
They both really have very close peak wise. Like Pistol has like 7 legit years. T-Mac like 8 or 9 legit years. So it's pretty close in that stuff. I think they both were trying to carry terrible franchises.
especially
Um,
especially when he was in Orlando.
I mean, actually, the T-Mac episode is in 2 episodes. I've already written down a bunch of my case. It's actually pretty ridiculous the amount of trash T-Mac was playing with in Orlando, and I think Pistol was in a similar situation. So their careers are, the more we talk about it, are kind of eerily similar.
They really are. Yeah.
So, and as you know, we've all established at this point, I am an Orlando Magic fan, so I have a special place in my heart for T-Mac. So
And I'm the old guy, so I picked Pete.
Another thing
Yeah.
with T-Mac and Pete is, what about with their knee injuries? Did Pete get as much treatment on his knees as he maybe could have today compared to what T-Mac got? Maybe that's why T-Mac lasted a couple more years, because he got better treatment.
I highly doubt he got the same treatment.
at that time, tearing your ACL was a death sentence.
Right. Yeah, you were done.
I mean, even at the beginning of my lifetime, tearing your ACL seemed to be a death sentence for your career. I mean, let's just think about this. It ended Penny's career,
Yes.
and that was in the mid-'90s.
Right.
That wasn't just like in the 70s. Like medicine, like guys tear their ACL now, and we're like, oh, we'll see them next year.
Right.
It's
Like we don't even think about it.
And it's a different sport, but Adrian Peterson tore his ACL and 8 months later rushed for 2,000 yards.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
Now
And
it's like Klay Thompson. We're like, okay, we'll just see him next year again, I guess.
And then he tore his Achilles.
yeah.
But yeah. Okay, I have another random question. I really don't know the answer to this because I watched the early 2000s, but what's a tougher era, the 70s or the early 2000s, do you think? I don't know much about the 70s. That's my problem.
The 70s is the lost era of basketball.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, everybody talks, even though it's almost a different sport. Everybody talks about the 60s because of who was playing and what happened. The 80s is again super popular. The 90s carries that through with Jordan. The 2000s is what it is. The 70s just kind of get left out.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when he came in, they did not like the flashy. Like I said, when earlier in his career, like in high school and other things, when he did people in the nose and break their nose, he's coming into the NBA. He's doing similar things. I mean, these are pros, and he's drilling them with passes that they weren't seeing coming. And then you also had the quite a few years there where you had ABA, NBA. And so you had two leagues going. And then finally, 76, 77, they got together. And the NBA took in the top 4 ABA teams.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the ABA, all those good players suddenly were all over the NBA. And they got this huge influx of talent. And everybody was there. And then that just set things up for Magic and Larry to light it up.
So did Pete win his scoring championship after the merger?
The year that the ABA came in.
Year they merged? Okay.
Yep, that was the year they came in. So all the ABA players, Rick Barry and all them, were there.
Okay.
And Dr. J.
And Dr. J, yes.
I had a question about what you just said. Now I just completely blanked on it. So I apologize. So how old would you have been in 77, 78 when you won a scoring title?
77, I would have been 16.
Oh, so you would.
Yeah.
That's old enough for you to remember
Right.
this stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, do you remember watching Pistol then?
I saw him a little bit, but you got to remember at the end we didn't have ESPN,
Oh, absolutely.
and the NBA was not on all the time. You might get a game on Sunday afternoon, or Saturday was usually college basketball. So you might get a game a week, whereas now you can get a game every day.
Yeah.
During that time period, when the NBA Finals were on, they were on tape delay. They showed them, after the 10 o'clock news, stuff like that. I mean, it was a different world for as far as being able to see those guys play.
Yeah, I mean I knew about that stuff, but it's hard to picture in your head for us younger guys, like what you couldn't watch the NBA because none of the people wanted to watch it, or
Right.
like nobody wanted to air it. I mean,
It just
Like-
it just wasn't on that much. I mean, they see some games sometimes on Saturday.
like I could pull a game off my phone right now.
Right.
Right.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
could. Well, a good example. When I was a kid, probably my favorite player was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I learned to watch him when he played for UCLA, and I saw him probably more playing for UCLA than when he went to the Bucks, because I could watch every Saturday. UCLA was probably going to be the game of the week because they were really good, and I got to see Kareem play all the time. When he went to Milwaukee, I didn't really see him play until it was the finals.
Another another thing with that was they didn't have ESPN, so you can just turn on anytime. Like, ooh, what's the local game going on, or local news
The
around
highlights,
the leagues,
yeah.
highlights, anything. You didn't know. So if you weren't like watching the games, you didn't know if he was in the chance for the scoring title, who was favorite MVP, finals, and all this other stuff. You just didn't know.
Another question I had about Pistol Pete, and I don't think we don't have the answer to it, but like we talked about, what if there was a 3-point line, or what if they kept track of steals? But on the reverse side of that, with all his flashiness and all his brazenness, what if they kept track of turnovers?
Ooh.
What would his turnover numbers look like? Even if they weren't his fault, what if he was just bouncing passes off his teammates?
Is it his turnover if it bounces off his teammate?
Good question.
Well, actually, it depends because when we watch film for like our team in basketball, it depends on if it's catchable, then it's on the person that catches it. If it's not, then it's on the person who passes it.
But let me ask you this: if the guy keeping the numbers on your team doesn't like you because you're too flashy, does he give all those to you?
I guess
Well,
it's
we
just
do
a
it
matter of
together
opinion.
as a team, and whatever.
I get that, but that's not what they do in the NBA.
Well, that's true.
I know, like there's a guy keeping book for each team, and if the team, like you're talking about the Atlanta, a lot of the Atlanta guys didn't like him. Are you gonna piss off Hall of Famers Walt Bellamy and Lou Hudson by giving them turnovers because they passes bounced off their head and chest because they didn't catch them?
So pretty much just a matter of opinion.
I mean, very true. I wasn't even trying to get to that. I was just wondering, like, we're talking about all these crazy highlight passes, and you can YouTube him right now. He makes some passes where you're like, holy cow. But how many of those did he sail in the stands, too?
Right. He averaged 3.7 turnovers for his career.
I don't think they kept turnovers then.
I was able to get.
Oh, they got. Yeah, I have that too. They kept turnovers his last 5 years in the league.
Yeah. So
1 year
the partial stat.
1 year in 77-78, he averaged 5 a game.
Yeah.
I mean that's pretty. I mean that's James Harden level.
Right. So. But like you said, how many of them are, like say, sailing into the stands, or how many of them are bouncing off somebody's forehead?
Yeah. So who knows?
No, I do think though that if you transplanted Pistol Pete to today's NBA, where there's a whole bunch of shooting threes, running the break,
Everything's just wide open. It's
yeah,
spread out.
a lot of wide open, where he's got to beat one guy in front of him, and then there's a open lane. I think Pistol Pete thrives.
Yeah, I think he was born too soon. He came to the NBA and ahead of his time.
The only other thing is this is the case for a lot of guys from his time, but he weighed less than 200 pounds.
Right. Yeah, he was skinny. One of the famous things about him was his
Floppy socks.
'Cause he couldn't keep 'em up.
His calves were so small, his socks wouldn't stay up on his legs. But he wore tall socks. So, yeah.
Are we wrapping it up? Are we good?
Yeah, we can do our closing statements.
Oh, you had something to say. Sorry, I thought.
No,
we were
you're good.
wrapping everything up.
No, I'm just meandering on. So go ahead, Wade, kick us off with your closing statement.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't mean to rush into it. My bad.
You wanted to do it so bad.
I thought we were just kind of beating around the bush there. That was time to go. All right, this is kind of a fascinating podcast, to be honest. He's an extremely interesting player. I think I brought it up earlier. He has extremely high peak, which some players can't say, but the lack of time really hurt him. Obviously, he doesn't win a championship. He's on really bad teams, but kind of similar to what I said about Chris Mullin. He plays in a different era. He's on a different team. I think he translates to most eras. It's just kind of an unfortunate. Like if you replay his career 10 times, this might be the worst one. Like a lot of bad things seem to happen to him. I feel like a lot of different scenarios could have helped him out a lot, but unfortunately, he had to deal with what he had. So he didn't quite make the list.
I feel like if you drop him in a different time zone or time period, whatever you want to call it, give him a little better situations, I think he can make the list if you give him 3-point line and that kind of stuff. Put him on a better team, maybe at least. Maybe he could definitely score, and he could definitely probably lead his team to the championship if he was giving people a little bit better. But he just had a bad situation, and there's a lot of what ifs, but you can't base your list on what ifs, so that's why he didn't make my list.
All right. Yeah, if he was in the 90s, I'd sure pick his ass. So, yeah. Stat line solid. Whether he's got the turnovers or not, I mean, he's still putting up like 30 points a game. So he's making up for it somewhere. I like his passing ability. His scoring ability was solid. Yeah. If I seen him play, he's on my list.
Like I said earlier, I really like Pistol. There's so many what ifs with his career; it's almost depressing. I think we talked a lot about different times, or what ifs as far as those things. I think it would have made a world difference if he just was drafted by a different franchise. And I'll use somebody that's super popular as a prime example. Red Auerbach encouraged these types of things. Red Auerbach loved Bob Cousy, who was considered flashy and showy a decade earlier. And I read in Bill Russell's book, Red and Me, that Red had an obsession with Pistol Pete and tried very hard to get him to the Celtics previous to when he actually did, before he was broken down, and was never able to accomplish it. So I wonder if Pistol was running the show for Havlicek and Cowens, if that doesn't just completely transform his career, where he has championships, where he maybe has an MVP because he's a Celtic and because he's winning, and maybe him not having to carry the entire load, maybe his body doesn't break down as quick, or maybe he's not as depressed because everybody on his team doesn't dislike him, and his guy Red Auerbach is like, hey, treat my boy good. No, because Red ran the Celtics. That was his thing. It was his team. There was no going against Red. So maybe even a change of decade didn't need to happen. Maybe just a change of franchise, which I don't have anything against the Hawks personally. It doesn't seem like it worked for him. That's all I got.
I think you're exactly right. I think the fact that he was so good in college, he ended up where he ended up. And he ended up with a team that wanted to play conservative, and that wasn't his style. I do agree there's a lot of what-ifs here. We've had other players like that. This is just one I thought we ought to talk about. Elgin Baylor once said that Jerry West was the best basketball player or the best guard that he played with. I believe he said Bob Cousy was the best guard he ever played against. But he said that Pistol was the best guard he ever saw. Again, it's a big what if, and I'm completely okay with people putting T-Mac. We're all right there. I'm just the old guy, so I got to get a plug in for him once in a while. But I enjoyed doing the research and talking about it.
Not trying to be a jerk, but he switched Cousy with, it should have been Oscar Robertson.
Oh, Oscar Robertson, sorry.
Yep.
I had written part of it down. I didn't get it all written down. So thank you for correcting me there.
With that being said, we'll move on to our next section, which is trivia, where we're all trying to catch Drew. So who wants to go first?
I'll go. Have a little theme for today. Or today, my bad. For our last few episodes. I happened to fall upon career team leaders in points, and I found some of them fascinating. Who is the all-time leading scorer in Philadelphia 76ers history?
I would say Chamberlain.
That's a good guess. I'm going to say Allen Iverson.
That's what I'm going with, Iverson.
I'm going to go with Dr. J.
It is Hal Greer.
Ouch.
With
Oh,
29.
man.
Iverson was second.
Wow.
Chamberlain's like 10th. Who was that? Dr. J?
Yeah.
He is 4th. Yeah, I did not see that coming when I came across that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I thought of just a handful of guys right off the top of my head, and none of them were
they
Hal
have a
Greer.
ton of popular players that play that. Barkley, Irving, Iverson,
Yeah.
Moses
Chamberlain,
Malone.
Moses Malone, but
Dolph Shays.
Dolph Shays.
Yeah, there you go.
None of them were there long enough.
Like some of them, like Iverson was there for a little while. Dolph Shays was high on the list.
Mm.
Yeah, but Barkley was only there for a little period of time. Dr. J was there for the end. Well, he already played a while, but stuff like that.
All right, who wants to go next?
I'll go.
All right.
Of course, we just got through talking about Pistol. Pistol is 20th on the all-time points per game list in the NBA. Of course, number 1 is Michael Jordan. Number 2 is Wilt. Who is number 3 on the all-time points per game list?
Elgin Baylor.
Interesting. Kobe Bryant.
Tuffy.
LeBron. I'll go LeBron.
I think I'm gonna go Elgin Baylor. I think that was a good choice.
Actually, you two are correct. It was Elgin Baylor. He averaged 27.4
because he was a
for his
beast,
career.
and he had a shorter career, so that made sense. I'm guessing you heard your dad say that at one point.
No, actually, I saw it in a TikTok the other day. Not gonna lie.
Don't brag about that.
I'm just saying it was Michael, Wilt, and I saw Elgin. I'm like, okay, I might use for a trivia question one day. And then he just said it. Like,
I
okay.
beat him to it.
All right, well, I'm ready.
Go
My
for it.
trivia question. So Pistol Pete won, for keep the theme with Pete, he won a scoring title in 76-77. Who won the MVP that year if Pete didn't?
76, 77.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Bill Walton?
Forgot about Bill Walton.
Yeah, I think Alex is right. I'm going to go with Walton.
I'll go Walton.
Make it 4.
It is Kareem. Bill Walton
Oh.
came in second, and Pistol Pete came in third.
So then Walton had to win it the year before then? Because he won it, and then the next year got hurt.
Right. I'm not sure.
I'll look it up real quick,
Okay.
guys. Don't worry.
So Pete won the scoring title and finished 3rd in the MVP. Interesting.
All right, you ready, Ray?
Yep. Who was the first ever unrestricted free agent?
Oh,
I should know this. All I'm thinking of is baseball. I can answer that question.
Yeah, Kurt Flood in baseball.
right.
By the way, Bill Walton won it in 77-78.
Oh, the year after. Okay,
Next
gotcha.
year. Okay. Oh man, first ever free agent.
I honestly don't even have an idea.
I'm just gonna go with Bob Pettit because that's my man.
I'll go with Artis Gilmore.
Okay.
Dave Bing.
Okay.
I'll piggyback on the Gilmore one. I don't know.
All right. Man, this NBA trivia book is paying off tonight. It is Tom Chambers.
Alex! Wow, what year was that?
Let's see.
Freaking
Man.
Tom Chambers.
Tom went to Phoenix in 1988.
Wow, they
Andrew,
weren't unrestricted free agents.
Tom
till
fucked us again.
88.
So does that mean that
He
everybody
effed
before
us
that was restricted?
real hard this time.
Yeah,
must have
been.
Bob Pettit said
Those
better
guys
than Tom
changed
Chambers.
Oh yeah,
Previous to that.
Those James
right.
Worthy's better than Tom Chambers.
Him
must
too.
have all been trades.
We're just having a
Wow. Yeah.
conversation.
Oh, that's a good one, Ray. That's educational.
All right, so I'm gonna stick with my theme from the last episode. What NBA player had a starring role in the great movie Game of Death?
Be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Kareem.
Oh, this is the Bruce Lee movie?
I don't know. Is it?
Yep.
Oh, yes,
Kareem.
this is Bruce Lee movie. It's Kareem.
Kareem.
Yes, it is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Quit piggybacking, Drew.
Exactly.
No,
He's piggybacking.
That's it. Everyone else answered Kareem too.
Only one person in this room knew the answer.
That's
And
true.
just like last week on my question, only one person knew the answer, and all 4 of you get the same answer, and you get it, and then I fall further behind.
I've actually seen that movie. Kareem studied with Bruce Lee for years.
I've seen YouTube clips. That's about it.
Yeah, it's
I've heard
funny
my
to
dad-
watch him fight when
I've
Bruce
heard my
is
dad
not even
talk
6
about it.
foot.
Well, like, I actually watched the making of that movie one time, and they were talking about how, like, Kareem walked in, and some of the guys on set are like, we can't make this look realistic. like in real life, Kareem kicked the shit out of this guy, and like Bruce was like, "What?" Like, I trained this guy,
Right.
like, and so like, they're like, "Hey, Bruce, we want you to do blah," blah," and Bruce is like, "Shut up, just say cut, or say action," and like that's when he runs up the banister of the thing, kicks Kareem in the face, and it's like, and they said everybody in the room was like, what the hell just happened? He's like they're standing across the room from each other, and like he runs at Kareem and like runs up the banister of a stairwell, and like jumps off it, does this spin kick, and it's like all this stuff. He just does it off the top of his head. There was no choreography to it. Like he just like, this is what I'm gonna do. Kareem described getting kicked by Bruce Lee as getting hit by a car.
Yeah.
Sometime you get a chance, Google his Bruce Lee's 1-inch punch.
Yeah.
Unreal.
I think I've read about it.
Or him playing ping pong with nunchucks.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 That's nuts.
I mean, he's an unbelievable athlete.
All right, so anyway, we went off on a Bruce Lee tangent there. But the scores after this week are as follows. Ray with 10. Alex with 16. Doug with 18. Wade with 21. And Drew with 22.
Just can't catch the other side of the room.
Yes. So, that being said, that'll wrap up another week of Sports the Nemo way. So we appreciate your listens and keep tuning in. Next week will be a double episode with none other than Sean, the Rain Man Kemp, and Joe, Boring as Shit Dumars. So,
Wow. What a nickname.
But anyway, tune in next week to hear about those guys, and we'll see you then.